we'll go ahead and call our meeting back to order. Mrs. Shawnee, can you read us out of close, please?
Yes, I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position of negotiating strategy of the school board pursuant to the real property exemption at 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia. I also move to certify to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. No action from closed. 3.01 Employee Extended Work Plan for 2024-2025. Mr. Jim Bradshaw.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, every year I bring to you the extended work plan known as EWIP for the upcoming school year. And this year, I'm going to highlight quickly the basic bullet points. Basically, you have to be eligible to retire from VRS system, be at least 55 years of age, a full-time employee with us for the past 10 continuous years. They have to complete the current contract, which means they can't leave in the middle of the year. And participating in this, basically what they have to do is they have to give a letter to us by January 31st, requesting EWIP, saying that they're going to retire. We put them on the list for y'all's approval, normally at the February board meeting. And if they're approved, the school board contributes $2,500 towards their annual premium health insurance. If an employee is on an improvement plan or some sort of disciplinary action like that, then they're not eligible for EWIP. We're not asking for any changes to our current plan. We're just asking that basically you approve it for next year as we have it currently. And I know one of the questions you normally ask me is how many do we have? And we have 154 current retirees on our EWIP plan. So it is a very successful program for Roanoke County, and we hope you approve to continue it. So,
And we'll just put that on consent.
yes, if that's okay, that'd be great.
Yep, good with that.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw.
Thank you.
3.02 Request of Surplus Music Department Equipment. Rick Elliott. Evening, Mr. Elliott.
Good evening, Chairman. Sit above the chairs. Sit on the chair. I put on your places proposal to take surplus old equipment that has not been used in years and ask that we sell it to a music store in our area where they can give us credit for repairs that are not covered under our current budget. Our budget doesn't cover a repad for woodwinds, and it's expensive and very tedious, so they don't cover that in our normal repair budget. So what I'm trying to do is take all the equipment that is around the county, it's not being used, and instead of surplusing it and getting nothing for it, using it to give credit for us so we can get it for credit for repairs that students need. And I put one on by your places, and it shows all the equipment there. This is stuff that came out of Glenver's band shed recently. And Hill City Music has looked at it and priced it to give us $600 credit.
So we just put it on consent agenda?
Is that legal that we don't auction it off?
Well, I looked into it 2 years ago, and I was told that this was proper and this is legal, yes.
It would be no different than if you traded in a car and got a new car. Same kind of concept, so it's fine. It complies with our policies and procedures.
I think it's a great idea.
State law and all that.
Benefits our kids.
Purchasing, it's all kind of.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
It'll be fine.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
thank you.
Item 3.03, 2024-2025 Registration Guide. Mr. Jason Sird.
Gentlemen, members of the board. Annually, staff reviews the registration guide and recommends changes as needed. All changes have been noted on the attachment on board docs. The registration guide proposals have been put there. Changes have been noted in yellow and/or red type. And that draft is on board docs. Also, significant changes are an additional attachment on board docs, and I'll run through those real quick. CTE, that we're adding radiologic technologists to. That'll be the second year of the program that students can jump into after having Rad Tech 1. And the Navy program, third year, we're actually already looking at our third year of that program, was just over there today, going well. Health and PE, proposal is to add advanced PE 2, so students can have a course credit for their senior year. Add an introduction to personal fitness, although this would take the place of strength and conditioning, just kind of renaming that to connote more than just weight training. And then add advanced personal fitness to ensure students get credit for something some students are already taking and not getting credit for. And one of the big questions, like Mr. Bradshaw just said, a lot of times the question is, will this add to staffing? It is not anticipated that this would add to staffing due to the smaller size of the more advanced classes they can combine and teach 2 levels in one. Social studies is also planning to add AP Human Geography to extend the elective choices and to offer another AP course that could help students earn college credit, and that would be an online-only class. So those are those courses right there are probably the biggest things. Otherwise, as you look through that registration guide, the highlights, a lot of grammatical stuff, relatively minor changes. Just wanted to bring that for you all this evening, and I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
Yeah, I noticed on, I've got a few questions, real quick, hopefully. Page 23, 31, 37, college algebra was the only spot I saw where it said if they'd already taken one class, they may not take that, if they'd already taken pre-calculus.
Well, college algebra precedes, that would be a level preceding, and I'm falling back on my math time as a math teacher, but college algebra precedes a pre-calculus level. Did you say pre-calc or
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be after a student takes Algebra 2 and they didn't want to go on to take pre-calc, they would have that college algebra to be able to take there. Does that,
What if they went algebra 2, pre-calc, and then decided they didn't want to take calculus, they wanted to go back and take college algebra?
that I'd have to refer to.
Because the only where
math.
I said, that if they've taken this, they may not take that.
What is, I'm sorry, I don't have the full guide in front of me, but
I mean, if they've taken something ahead of time, they can't go backwards.
like that would almost be a regression back. I don't know that they'd be prohibited from taking it, but it wouldn't necessarily be an advancement of their math knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
I understood that, but I was just curious as to why, if they decided they wanted to not take calculus and they needed another math, why they couldn't go back and take, it'd be
It
easier
might be,
for
it
them.
might end up being a
Too easy,
case-by-case
probably.
basis where they'd have to look at it by student, but I don't know where a student would want to kind of go back. It'd be like taking Algebra 2 and then going back and taking Algebra 1. It would probably be rather redundant. So I don't know if it's pulled up there.
Page 23.
Can you zoom in a little bit? Okay.
In all of the classes, it was really the only area that I said they may not go back and take something else.
Again, I'm not positive, but I'd go back to what I said about it being kind of a
Step backwards.
step backwards, yeah.
And then I noticed a few of the high school, like, is there a reason we don't have German out at Glenver? Is it just, that's the only high school of the 5 high schools that didn't offer German?
That I don't, probably, if it's offered at all high schools, but yeah, it would be offered, but if it doesn't have enough students to run, they won't run it. Yeah. And that's pretty typical across, any course. If you don't have enough students to run the course and substantiate the cost of the teacher, then it's not able to be run at that location.
In the past, I believe they've done some virtual options to allow
Maybe,
kids to be able to participate
that's right.
from another one of the high schools, so they would have that opportunity. So we've done creative things to make sure kids get what they need if they want that at a small school.
And then I noticed there were 3 classes that are taught at all the middle schools, but not at Hidden Valley. Teen Living, FACS 6, FACS 7, is there a reason they're not taught at that one middle school?
Well, and that goes down to a school decision. They are offerable, but sometimes those rotations aren't uniform across the middle schools. That's something that they use to, the middle schools use those classes to get their students into, but if they don't have the capacity to offer them, they can't offer them.
Yeah, Hidden Valley
Yeah,
Middle.
yeah.
It's been many years ago, the Family Consumer Science room was converted to a special education room, and there's no place in the school to offer those classes at this point.
We'd like to be able to offer them, but just don't have that capacity right now.
At Hidden Valley Middle School? We should look into that. That seems.
Trailer? Or,
Well, we've got
learning
plenty of
Learning cottage,
space.
yeah.
Out-
Yeah, not a.
Learning cottage?
Only invent and we allow that. Y'all
That was
got-
it?
Y'all
That was all I
gotta,
had.
y'all gotta
All right.
step that up over there.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
3.04 Pogue Farm discussion, Mr. Todd Kegels.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure why that's on the agenda there. That's what we did in closed session.
Okay.
And so the next part would be the easement discussion. If the board prefers to, as discussed in closed, if you prefer to skip that and put it on action for next week, I believe is what the board expressed as their preference. Or if you want me to go over it again right now, we can do that real quickly.
Okay, we can wait and see where we land.
We'll just wait.
Yeah,
on the next one.
makes it
We'll go by that one.
Okay, and Chuck, if we could get the, thank you. So the next thing we need to look at then are some upcoming capital needs. And so I put together a little list of needs that are not currently funded through the CMP in a rough order of need. So some of them, you can't differentiate between the level of need between the two. So roughly, they're in order of need. At Glenver Elementary School, we really need to at least replace the one section of roof that blew off last year. The approximate cost of that's about $150,000. And you can see in these photographs, you see we have standing water up here. This is after a long period of time. We still have water standing up here. And all of these little, they're not dimples, they're actually where the fasteners underneath the membrane are actually poking through the membrane. So every place you have one of those, you have a leak just waiting to happen. The life is at the roof is at the end of its life. It's actually already 7 years past its warranty, so typically we look at 20 years on those roofs. It was, that would put it at 2016 is when it needed to be replaced, and of course, we're at, 23 now. So it's already about 7 years, past its designed life. And that condition exists all over the roof. It's not just that one section, but for now, we're looking at just replacing that one section. So this is the section that blew loose, and you can see, if I could figure out what I'm doing here. Okay, so right here on this one, this is the section that blew loose. And all of these little spots here are patches that we put in. You see there's like, 25 patches or so there. That's where we had to go in and screw the roof back down and then patch over the new fasteners that we put in. So it's in pretty rough shape, and we need to look at fixing that as soon as possible. The next request is Burlington Elementary School. If you recall, last year they asked for a mobile unit to be installed out there. We delayed that because of funding last year. They still have that same need, even more so this year with some additional students, I believe. And what we would like to do instead of doing a mobile unit is to go in here and renovate these spaces in the basement. So this is kind of what it looks like now. There's the hallway kind of leading to it. It's in rough shape now, but we think that for about the same cost as putting a mobile unit in out there, we can renovate that space and make it usable for the school and actually get them 4 classrooms instead of just the one trailer. So we'd go in, we'd do new floors, new windows, new ceilings. The expensive part's going to be the HVAC. They've had some water issues there in the past. We think we've already corrected the water infiltration issues, and it would just be making sure that, they don't have moisture problems down there and that kind of thing, which is what we'll do through the HVAC system. So that's the second one. And that was, just so you know, if you want to read this later, it's posted on Board Docs. And those are the reasons from the school, why they feel like they need additional space. And they have quite a few good reasons there. Cave Spring High School, you guys are all aware of this one already. Their track was originally paid for by the school. They did fundraising and they paid to install that track. And it's reached the end of its life. So you can see from the photographs and the photographs you guys previously had access to, it's worn out and it's time to replace it. The cost to do that is about $200,000. It would have to be done in the spring because it's already too cold for that rubber to be put down. My recommendation is that we now pay to resurface the track, given that they installed it originally. And Ms. Peterson actually suggested that we start doing just like we do with the artificial turf fields. We start setting aside some money each year in the budget to replace these tracks because we have 5 of these now. And they'll all need, the life is about 10 years, and so they'll all need to be, replaced at some point. This is just the first one.
What's the shape of the other ones, Todd?
Pretty good, actually. With the exception of Hidden Valley, I did not assess that one.
Okay.
At Hidden Valley High. But all of the others are pretty good. They're not that old, and they did they put down a good quality surface when they did it, so they're in real good shape. You don't have exposed asphalt or anything like that.
Who was it that ran across the country to get that down?
Oh, he's a teacher now. Lawrence Losel, and I can't remember the other guy. He wasn't with, I don't think he was with the schools.
I would think if we could talk Tim Greenway into running across the country, we could probably do enough fundraising
You mean
to
run
pay
out-
for that again.
Did you say run out to his car?
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah.
Let's move on.
Man's making fun of your physical stature. I've not said anything about him being
Do that
vertically
this damn time.
challenged.
Not out in public.
Well, no. Never would I do that.
No.
Our next request is Mountain View Elementary School. We discussed this one last year also. They have a sanitary line out there that runs from the school out to the Water Authority connection, and it needs to be replaced. It's a concrete pipe that has the bottom of the pipe eaten out of it just through corrosion over the years. It's, we've had to address it several times. It stops up, we go out, we unstop it, but then the blockages always come back because of the condition of the pipe. No pictures on that one for obvious reasons. It's a sanitary line, so. Questions about that one?
what would they replace that with?
We'd go back with PVC.
I know there are a couple companies out there that now can put a liner inside of a current pipe.
They can.
Is that cheaper?
I don't think so. We can certainly look at that. If we decide to approve funding for it, we can certainly look at that and do it. If that's going to give us the same sort of lifespan, to see if they can do that inside of a concrete pipe that's missing the bottom. I know when pipes are cracked and that kind of thing, we've actually looked at that on some other jobs. We can go in and put the liners in, but I'm not certain on the concrete pipes, but we'll certainly look at it.
The other thing is if you've had some cave in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
And what if you caved in on the liner?
Well, then
Then you gotta
you'd
go
have
back
to
again.
replace it.
Yeah.
Right, and when we do these kinds of repairs, we like to make sure we're doing them for another 30 years or whatever it is versus, just getting us through a few years. Glenboro Elementary School, this one was just brought to our attention. They have a paved play area out back there. The pictures don't do it justice, so if you have questions about that, I would encourage you to go out there and take a look at this. I'll give you an example right here. This, where you see the this sort of square patch here that's been patched before in the past, is actually it doesn't show the elevation change there. So that's actually pretty deep. That's I don't know, maybe 6 inches deep or so in places. You can see where the water kind of stands in it. So the pictures don't really show the condition necessarily. So you have a bunch of cracks, you have the elevation changes, and trip hazards here. So that's the problem on these play areas. You have kids out there running around constantly, and when I say running around, I mean running around. That's what they do when when they're not out in the grassy areas. They go out onto these paved areas here and Green Valley also. And where there's elevation changes, that presents some. I don't use the word safety concerns unless I really believe that there's a true safety concern. And with these, I do believe there's actually a safety concern because of the elevation and trip hazards for the little kids that are running around.
Look at theirs is kind of similar to that, their play area out there.
And I know Burlington's isn't real pretty either.
Yeah, I think, were you looking at doing Oak Groves too at one point too?
We haven't looked at Oak Groves.
Oh, I thought you told me you were doing that.
Haven't looked at that one.
No, okay.
And what was the other one? Bonsack and
Burlington.
And Oak Grove, I know there was an area behind, they thought that they were on the list.
not to my knowledge. I don't
Okay.
recall ever going, or ever being asked to evaluate that one, but we can certainly go out there and take a look at that one. Do that this week. Actually, we'll do that next week. We won't be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Green Valley, it's very similar out there. Mr. Ray actually asked us to take a look at this one. And we were already doing that, actually. This one has holes in it. You can see them there. And in addition to the elevation changes, the cracks, all of that, the pavement's in poor shape. It sounds like in most of these, not just the ones we're looking at here. I think that's probably the best picture that shows the condition.
If we're doing this type of work, we need to add Bonsack.
I added them to the list. We'll go out there and
Yeah.
and take a look. I will say we don't have enough money to do all of them at the same time, so we probably need to start knocking them out, And it depends on the size. The one at Glenver's pretty big, so it's pretty expensive. This one, at Green Valley, is not as expensive, so. And then the last two are carpet replacement. The principal asked us to come out to Penn Forest and take a look at the carpet out there in their forum. She said it's original to the building, and because of the way it's used by the elementary school, it gets exposed to bodily fluids on a regular basis, and so it does smell bad. It doesn't look really bad out there. It's old. The carpet's clearly old. SSC does clean it. They run their carpet shampoo machines on it, but it's at this point they can't get the smell out of it. That would be about $25,000 to do that. And then the last one is Northside High School. Miss Green asked us to come out and take a look at the carpet in both the band room and their library, and it does look really bad. It's stained.
I would make the suggestion that anywhere we have carpet in high-traffic areas, we ought to look at that laminate flooring. It's so durable. And, if it spills or somebody, gets sick or
Yep.
anything else, it's so much easier to clean and
Yeah.
take care of. It's no more expensive.
It's not.
Just curious in a band room whether sound-wise that's going to be an issue.
Well, actually, at Northside, what we would do is go back with, they have a product called acoustic vinyl now, and it's the same stuff we're just putting in at William Byrd High School in the band room as part of the renovation, so we would go back with that same material at Northside.
And I don't think you'd have to replace it near as often.
Right.
Well, and just like you said, Penn Forest, they'd be easier to clean it, and then you wouldn't have that problem of stains as you go bodily fluids, like you said.
That's right, because that stuff, all you have to do is mop it. You don't have to
Mop it
wax
up.
it, you don't have to do
That's
any
a
of
good
that
idea.
stuff. It's a good product.
A lot of it has a 20-year plus warranty.
It's virtually indestructible. It's
It really is.
Well, that is the last of the current capital requests. Now, that's not to say those are the only needs we have. Those are just ones that we've identified right now that are relatively expensive, that are not currently funded.
So
in
now
the,
we can add
CMP.
what we've got for you?
What's that?
So now we can add our,
Oh, yeah, let's put it all on there.
What else do you want from Weaver?
I'm working on it.
Give us a little piece of the pie.
Like, Back Creek's looks fine, right? Their pavement? I feel
The
like
what?
Back Creek. Have you looked
Back
at
Creek?
it? The pavement,
Uh,
the playground, I feel
It,
like.
some of the, maybe the pieces around the side and back where the buses are, you might take a look at that. You know, where they get that traffic, more heavy traffic, where the buses line up, and they make that turn, so that's,
So you're talking about actually in the parking lot, not in a play
Yeah.
area?
yeah, in the parking lot. See if there's any of the cracks and things. But the play area is that new equipment out there. It hadn't been too long,
I thought it was looking okay.
and they should have replaced, you know, whatever the type of material they're gonna use for the play area. They should have. You let us know if they didn't, I would think.
Yeah, on the, you're talking about the new playground?
Yeah.
That was installed, well, they mulched, you know, all of the playgrounds. Back Creek actually has a part that is poured in place, they have that rubber
Yeah,
around it also. It's getting old, but it's still in good shape. I mean, it doesn't have holes in it
Oh,
or
it
anything
doesn't.
like these. But we'll go out and look at the
yeah, you
parking
can
lots.
look, see.
And this would include all of the paving. We know Northside High School, the bus lot and the road that goes up around the bus lot there's got to be paved soon. We're going to have to go over and patch the holes before that. I drive over there all the time, and it's got some pretty deep holes that you have to really slow down, you know, before you hit them. And but that's funded in the CMP. That's why it's not on the list, because it will be done. It's just going to be after July 1st in next year's CMP.
Let's see, which ones we're inventing on this? Oh, no, there was none of them. How about that?
What's
What's
that?
that?
You've already got
Yeah, I
it
was
all.
gonna say, you've already spent your,
Well, Mr. Greenway, I thought you might say
Go
something
ahead.
like that.
Yeah, tell
And,
me.
so I want to make
How many
sure.
millions is that?
So we did some things though, like similar to these requests. We've already done some of those things. Like at Bird Middle, we went and replaced the carpet in the attendance office there. We replaced the carpet in with a vinyl product in all of the administrative offices over there at Herman L. Horn, and then the training room at William Byrd Middle. We pulled up all that old carpet, which was original to the 1980s building. We pulled up all that down and put down VCT. So it's not. These are just the things
Nice.
that
No,
this
we're
isn't a
good.
list of everything
No,
we're
we're
doing.
good.
Gosh, they have a
Just the
training
ones that
room
are
at the
not
middle
funded.
school?
Did that
What
get
kind
by
What kind of
us?
training room is it?
I like it.
So do we need,
that with
do we
excess
need
funds
to
from
figure out what we're gonna put
project?
on action now, or when do you need to know?
Well,
need to.
I think
That's
Miss Peterson might have
give
some
us an idea on the
suggestions
money.
on how to pay for it and where we go from
I
here.
thought you said we had plenty of money.
We got,
Well, I'll show you.
we got about
When's my turn?
$2
We didn't have
million.
20,000 the other day.
$2 million.
Easy.
I'll show you when we get there.
I need to bring that back?
No.
I thought we were out. Okay.
All right. Is that all you have, Todd?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom.
Need to go drive around the dental schools.
No, you don't. They already got it. We need to go out
We
and
know
take
Tim's gonna
pictures.
be in that car first thing tomorrow
Item
morning.
3.07, updated June 30, 2023, year-end results, Ms. Susan Peterson.
All right, which one of these are we looking at?
Surplus and carryover.
This kind of looks like your personal banking account.
So the
right here.
first sheet that, I have a packet of 3 items
Right.
for you guys at your tables.
Which one?
There's a single sheet of paper, and that's the first one I'll talk about.
Okay.
And the front half of that, let's see,
That one.
looks like this. I presented this at the last work session, and there have been no changes. So this is not changed, so it'll be a short update. What I did want to do is on the back page, I would like to bring your attention, let's see, oops. Yeah, it's on the back of this. So at the bottom, you know, we split our carryover from the general fund, 50 to major capital, 50 to minor capital. And what we're recommending, it's $1,070,712.80 go to major capital, same amount goes to minor capital. So we took Mr. Cagle's list and we dropped in all of those projects as if we can fund them through minor capital. We also added the William Byrd High retractable basketball goals that we funded through operations, and the school board recommended that we put it into minor capital. That was approved August 17th. So that's the first item on the list. And then it goes down the same order that Mr. Cagle was presented. So if we funded all of the projects that Mr. Cagle has brought forth to you that are kind of a higher need right now, we would end up with $225,712.80 in minor capital. But once we close out all of the prior year, because there is additional funds sitting in minor capital, some revenue that we received that will be available, that'll go up slightly to an uptick of about $267,000 will be available for your allocation for other minor capital projects if we went ahead and set all of these up using minor capital funds. The major capital funds, part of the CIP for 2024 had us putting $2 million into the CTE project. Most of that will be taken care of by what remained in major capital reserves at the end of the year. The rest of it is the 599, 181 shown at the bottom of the schedule. And then the remaining major capital reserves, we're recommending going ahead and putting towards the Glen Cove and W. Cundiff projects. So all of major capital would go into the three projects that are on task on the CIP that we're looking to do. So if it is the board's desire to go ahead and move forward with all these projects in this manner, we can just throw this on as part of the action item when I present the audit and then the year-end results at the next meeting.
Okay. Any discussion? All right.
I think we
Thank
move
you.
on.
And if you have any changes to those projects, let me know and we can present any changes at that
We
time.
may, I didn't see any event in there.
First one.
Make sure we don't have any executive on this.
All right. Item 3.08, 23-24 original budget revisions.
All right, so moving on, that was last year. Now we're moving on to the current year. And I'm going to go over the Chapter 1 budget revisions. I will touch base. Mr. Williams and Ms. Hogan are coming up. They're going to discuss the All-in Virginia plan that was awarded to us as part of the budget revision in September. I've got some items to discuss with you about grants, and then realigning our ordinance for expenditure needs right now, along with everything that we're going to discuss today. So that will go over the ordinance that we would request of the county. So first, let's take a look at what happened with our budget, because the big question was, are we going to make our budget or are we going to lose money when it was approved? So we did take a conservatively aggressive stance. We adopted the House budget to try and get as much in as we could to begin with. And we were lucky that when the Chapter 1 budget came through in September, we actually ended up getting $657,780 more in the general fund than what we had budgeted. So we are covered with everything that we've done with our salaries and our raises. We're good to go. So what I'll be going over in the next couple of slides are some additional requests of how to spend this additional money. So that's in the general fund. Then if you look down 3 lines in the grant fund, we've got $4 million additional in the grant fund. The majority of that is the All-in Virginia plan. And then our mentor grant went down slightly. So those are the changes that came through from the state calc tool that came out in September.
Can you explain to us the all-in?
We have a lot on that, so yes, that will come up
You're gonna get
next,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
Looking at the general fund priorities, we kind of group them by department, kind of like we've done all along. Under human resources, we are recommending, staff is recommending that we go ahead and pay for the 5 additional football assistant coaches and the 5 additional volleyball assistant coaches that was presented during the August 17th meeting. What we're expecting to happen is really a reimbursement to the schools because they would have paid out for these coaches. So that would help our schools. Under administration, 40,000 would go towards athletic allotments. This would allow each high school to get another $5,500 and each middle school to get another $2,500. And then a little bit for copy paper, because we know schools always need additional copy paper. Moving into the special education arena, typically the EpiPens we get for free through a grant. We had a problem getting them this year. There were some distribution issues. So Ms. Vale had purchased some EpiPens because we had I guess we have an adult stock and we have a pediatric stock. And if I'm recalling correctly, I think the adult stock expired this fall. And so we spent about $8,800 to purchase those EpiPens. So that's just something that we need to have on site. We need to have them on stock. By building them into the budget here, then we won't have to be concerned when they run out and expire next time. We'll have the money already there so she can kind of circle around and purchase them as needed. We are recommending setting aside $50,000 for MANT training. This is an unfunded mandate that all administrators and anyone who may be in touch with any student with special needs that may need to be.
They teach you de-escalation strategies.
Yes.
And then should a kid become aggressive, how to handle that with respect and dignity and make sure you don't get hurt at the same time or the child.
Are there other approved, like, agencies that do this, or is this?
There are. We've looked into them. We've used MANT for many, many years, probably about 30 years. But we have looked at other companies that do this also periodically.
Is the general consensus that this is a good program for what we need versus the others?
And they're all very pricey.
Okay.
And then a small amount, $13,426 for homebound. This is more related to an increase in after-school teacher pay that we'll get to a little bit later. But that is what would increase our homebound costs. In the secondary instruction department, they found out after we adopted our budget that the tuition went from $4,715 per student to $5,000 per student. That was kind of out of our control because we found that out later. And so this $15,105 would cover that difference in the tuition that's being charged to us. Under the CTE, the work-based learning coordinator was on our unfunded list when we brought it to you to begin with, and we were just asking to go ahead and get that position set up and filled. Under facilities, if you recall, we for the original budget, we increased utilities for electricity because we saw that was rising exponentially. Dumpster fees we're seeing is on the rise as well, and so we're seeing some holes in the budget for dumpster fees, and so we think it would be a good idea to go ahead and set aside additional money for that.
Did you base it on last year's figures or what?
They looked at the current year budget and looked at all of the invoices that have been coming through. And then, so another thing that we had on the original unfunded budget were 2 positions. Originally, these were going to be in maintenance, but we're recommending them to go under facilities. And these are going to be kind of a special project crew. So when, not maintenance items, but more special project requests come up, that need to be taken care of. These two tradesmen will be sent out, they'll be monitored by Mr. Kagels, and they'll go out and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. We'll set aside $200,000 for materials for those two persons to use. And then the last item on the list, we're asking for a middle school bookkeeper. Currently, Glenver Middle and Glenver High are the only high school, middle school duo that share a bookkeeper. We are implementing additional accounting requirements to track athletics a little bit more comprehensively so that we can see how much is actually being spent on our sports by the school.
Is this something that they mandated in this change that took place recently? No?
Not that I'm aware
From
of.
the county with the
No.
budget piece? No.
No. This was something that I've worked with athletic directors and with Dr. Stigall.
I'm talking about the additional responsibilities. You're basically saying that we're adding responsibility onto the bookkeepers,
We are,
but that's not from anything to do with what I'm talking about.
no, this is more relatable to the fact that they're going to have to code all of athletics a certain way, a little bit more detailed. And not only that, but we're also implementing a new credit card system. So between the two changing in the systems, it's just going to be too much work for one person to cover two schools.
Gotcha.
It brings about more transparency and accountability and accuracy.
Correct. So that's it. Those two slides cover the $653,780 additional funds from the state. One thing I will note that for the positions that we added, I put the full position value in there, even though we only have a half a year left, because I think it's important to get it actually in the budget itself. So it'll be in the baseline budget when we start our 25 budgeting season here very shortly. But that will result in some payroll lapse in the current year. One other item that we would like approval of is Ms. Estrada and Mr. Kagels have talked about hiring a nutrition mechanic. This will be an individual who is really kind of a tradesman type mechanic who can go out and do electrical work, who can help to install ovens, dishwashers, be comfortable in our facilities, and so they would benefit being underneath Mr. Kagel's oversight by being really part of the facilities group. However, this individual will only work in our kitchens, on our kitchen equipment. And there is more than enough work to keep this person fully productive for an entire year, year after year. And so that being the case, if they only work in the kitchen, then the nutrition fund can pay for it, and they do have some excess monies with which to do this. And so really, this is just a reallocating of nutrition funds to the facilities department so that we can get a person in place, have the appropriate oversight, and them laser it in helping out our kitchens.
And in the past, how were those mechanical issues solved? Outsourced or?
So up until about 2 or 3 years ago, there was an electrician that was in maintenance that did a lot of the work for us. But then with changing kind of the structure of the work orders and the department itself, it was determined that they really didn't have enough individuals to set aside one person just for the kitchens, because they were being called out so much.
So it would be a cost savings?
It will help, yeah.
Do we already have a vehicle for that person, and could that vehicle expense be written off under the nutrition fund as well?
Interesting that you're asking, because the nutrition department just purchased a vehicle that could probably be used by this person last year that was approved. And so we probably could repurpose that one vehicle for this position, because it is one that I think the tradesman is using anyway.
So it's really number one, it's just allocating it differently.
Correct. So if there are no questions on that, Then I'm going to hand the presentation over to Mr. Williams and Ms. Hogan to review in detail your all-in plan.
As we mentioned before, just to give you a reminder, the All-in Virginia plan was Governor Youngkin's plan in conjunction with the Virginia Department of Education, to add multiple items, there you go. No. 4 categories of additional funds to our schools temporarily, grant funded. The first category being tutoring and acceleration. Our goal is about 70% of the funding to go there. The second category, in preparation for implementation of the Virginia Literacy Act, which will be about 20% of the funding. The third, the student attendance being addressed, chronic absenteeism specifically. We know based on the data we've seen that's an important area for us. So we're looking at 10% of the funding there roughly. And in category 4, a small amount for operating expenses and infrastructure support. Okay. So the first category, in terms of tutoring and learning acceleration, the first thing that we want to point out is that when we talk about tutoring, the state has wisely chosen an acceleration model. The acceleration model basically means that we don't start from behind. We essentially start from what they're learning in the classroom and then basically identify the gaps as they're learning current year content and backfill those gaps while the instruction is going on. And so what that does is it keeps the student from falling farther and farther behind. If you're always working on something they didn't get, then there's new holes that are developing if you don't do it through this model. So it's a smart model, and we're pleased that they're going that route. There's our current plan, and we're still learning about these programs, but our current plan is to use the state-provided high-dosage tutoring vendors. They have recently named Ignite Reading and Zern for math. I feel pretty comfortable that we're going to move forward on the Zern side of things. Ignite Reading, we still need to get some additional information from Ignite before we can make a final determination that's really the best thing for us. We need to find out specifically what their particular phonics-based approach is. Roanoke County's is based on Orton-Gillingham, and we want to make sure that it's compatible with what we're doing in the classroom so that we don't have different reading strategies being taught at the same time. Basically, we want the winds all blowing in the same direction there. So we're looking at that. We just had our initial introductory webinars from the state on those this week, Monday and Tuesday. So the state is just rolling that out now. They haven't given us information yet on any details, rostering, costs that could be involved. So we're still waiting on a lot of information from the state there before we get into some of the details on how that's implemented. But in preparation for that implementation, we know that we're going to have to carve out some time. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're looking at carving out half-hour blocks in the elementary schedule so that students will be able to basically, we call those blocks like a win period, the what I need period. And so if they need work with the math, they can work with Zern during that period. If they need to do tutoring, potentially with Ignite Reading. If they don't need help on either one of those, we can work on acceleration and enrichment as well. So there's, it's going to give us some additional flexibility, and that block will be on top of what they would normally do. They have trimmed like really small number of minutes out of a few other things to make that work. But by and large, we're going to end up with more time in reading and math.
So where do you find the time if you're not extending the school hours? And you can't cut art and you can't cut,
One of the things that we did was we realized that students are getting to school about 7:45, but the school day doesn't officially start until right before 8. And so what we're essentially doing is we're going to take some of that time there. So pretty much right off the bus, we're going to get moving. And that's going to allow us about half that 30 minutes. And then the other 15 minutes or so, we've trimmed from, basically just a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there off the schedule as a whole to make that work, and so that nobody's really taking the brunt of the hit in terms of that. So, but the net is that there's going to be more reading and math instruction. In terms of the middle schools, the middle schools already have 95-minute blocks for math and reading, and our results are, among the best in the state there. So our feeling is that the time is sufficient at the middle schools, so that we want to work within the block. And so these will probably be rotations done within the block. We're also going to offer after-school options at both the elementary and the middle schools. Could be some before school as well, if they deem that to be necessary. But the before and after school, if we do that, would be very, very supplementary, because frankly, when we talk about high dosage tutoring, the Zern program, it's a minimum of 3 times a week for 30 minutes per. And so, so that's going to be something that, it's hard for parents to get, after school 3 times a week. That takes a real dedicated parent with a lot of, time and resources. And the Ignite reading is actually, if we go that route, has to be done every day for 15. So that's, I don't know that that's something we would want to do after school, just because, transportation doesn't work with that, simply because we've got the 2 runs. So if you're an elementary student, we're doing the elementary run, then we're turning around and doing the secondary run. And otherwise, the students will be sitting there for 2 hours waiting for a bus to come back and do a 3rd run. So that's probably not what we want for our students. We can, however, tap into some of the after-school programs and likely work with them. And in terms of the money allocated to that, Stephanie, do you want to
Sure.
go into that?
What we did is, Mr. Riley and myself, is we talked to the principals at each of the buildings to start looking at how they were going to carve that time and to figure out, would they need additional tutors for their buildings? What would they need in terms of after-school supports for providing tutoring to kind of get us these figures for what we have, as well as for summer school. And so that's what you have for the first 3. And because the grant does go for 3 years, or can go for 3 years, the in-school tutoring for middle as well as for elementary over the 24 and then the 25 school year, we would have that. We'd have after-school tutoring for those 2 years as well. What we did with the elementary summer school, and I talked to Ms. Peterson about this as well, is we kind of front-loaded what the whole amount would be, and because we have money, it's in our general budget as well, allotted for summer school. So it would take over for the following 2 years as well, for summer school as well, for what those needs are. We also, with the elementary math specialists, those are ARPA funded currently for this year, and that grant will be ending, so we'd like to extend that for the next 2 years through this funding with that, so that we can continue working with the 2 math specialists that serve some of our high-need schools. And then, of course, same thing with middle school for in-school tutoring and after-school tutoring, as well as summer school. And then, of course, this year, we have ARPA-funded reading specialists at the middle level that we'd like to be able to fund using these monies as well. And so all of that together, of course, would take up about 70.8% of the total funding from the grant, which would meet the requirement that we've been asked to do. The next part is about the Virginia Literacy Act. Just a couple things just to touch base about. With the Virginia Literacy Act, Mr. Legault has really been working ahead of the game with this, making sure that us as a division will be ready to move forward with this. Just some of the requirements, we have to have a state-approved literacy plan, which we do. Core curriculum must align with the science of reading, and supplemental materials and interventions must align with the science of reading. We are very fortunate that he submitted to the state our supplementary materials and interventions that we used, and it was approved by the state. We have to provide training in the science of reading for teachers and reading specialists and principals, which we've been doing through different reading modules that we have. The reading instruction we have must follow the approved literacy plan and use approved materials. We know that the reading specialists through K through 8 will be responsible for developing, overseeing, and monitoring student reading plans. We actually, at the elementary level last year, started putting in place reading plans to address needs of individual students, and we've expanded that into this year. But next year is when it goes into full effect with the Literacy Act, that those plans have to be developed. So we're kind of ahead of the game with that. And then increase the ratio of reading specialists, 1 for each 550 students in K through 3rd, which we're in good shape with that. And then extend the reading specialist SOQ to the 8th grade, which we've already done that as well. And this would help cover the cost of the funding of that also.
So you're saying the ratio wouldn't change? We're already at that ratio?
Yes, for us, we meet that requirement.
And this money specifically set towards these goals?
Yes, sir.
The 70%, 20%, and 10% allocations are recommendation by VDOE. And especially with the Virginia Literacy Plan, you're going to see on the next slide, we only need 9.4%. We don't need 20% because we are so far advanced in implementing our plan. And so I don't think that there is a problem with us not meeting the exact percentages they put out, because we've put forth a very solid plan for all 3 of these areas to accomplish what the Virginia all-in plan is requesting of
We
us.
still get that 70%.
Well, we get the full 4 million regardless. It's just how we would allocate it between the 4 different pots of money. And one thing, an additional to note, is they only provide recommendations for 3 out of 4 of the categories. They gave an additional category in here. And so I think there is an expectation that it will be used for more than just exactly these percentages.
And so more specifically to my question, and maybe Ben, you can speak to this. So I feel like reading is the fundamental necessity for every child in life. So if we have the 1 to 550 and we're getting this money, what are we at right now, and why couldn't we push that to like 1 for every 400 to bring the ratio down? Where are we at now?
Well, we're having to fund the middle school reading specialists are not funded through the general budget. They're funded through the ARPA grant. So these monies are being used to fund those. Now, our elementary reading specialists, where we have 1 per school, those are budgeted already through the general funds, our general budget.
So we may not know exactly. So you're saying we have a reading specialist in every elementary school?
Mm-hmm.
So then that would be 1 for, let's say, like a Cundiff would be 450, Horn would be probably 375, and Mount Pleasant would be a 325, and a Bonsack would be a 300. Here's my, excuse me.
Yeah, those others would be the same.
So, in thinking this through, and again, this to me is a huge, huge point of emphasis, especially with the COVID and especially with Governor Youngkin's plan. If you've got and I'm just throwing this out there, I have no basis in factual knowledge, but I've got to believe this is true with what I know. If I've got one reading specialist for 450 at Cundiff, and I've got one reading specialist for 300 at Bonsack, that, and again, Ben, you correct me, but that fundamentally is flawed.
Well, the other three schools, Mount Pleasant, Horn, and Cundiff have Title I. So what we've done with that is they have Title I reading teachers that are in those buildings.
I knew that was coming,
Okay,
and I appreciate that.
yes, sir.
I get that we get the Title I funding. Now we're stretching it, instead of 3 or 4, we're stretching it to 6, and we may end up stretching that to 7 or 8, in the next year.
Right.
Burlington, let's go to Burlington. That's 450 or 475, whatever it is. And, we know that's our highest Title I school.
Right.
And again, I want to push the limits. I want to use every dollar we've got available. Why would we not consider adding another reading specialist that would cover some of our poorest or lower socioeconomic schools, or the free and reduced lunch, however you want to say it. But the
Right.
point is that this is an opportunity that I just don't want us to say, well, this is, we're meeting it and we're good and we get the money. I want it to be used for what I think is a huge concern, an important concern, that there are kids in that 450 or 475 at Cundiff that aren't going to be the same in that 300 at Bonsack. And I only say that because we get the kids from both.
Sure.
So I know the requirements for those 300 with that one reading specialist are not the same as that 450, 475 with the one for Cundiff. And I get that they get some Title I that Bonsack doesn't get,
They have 2 additional reading people.
but there's a reason they have those.
Oh, yes.
So,
And Mr. Brownlee, is that something you would like us to also look at in the regular budget process? Because with the grant-funded positions, we have them for a length of time, and then they're pulled from schools. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Reading is critical for our kids. And if that's something that we're going to have funds to continue, even after this grant goes away. So is that something you'd like us to present as well?
yes,
Okay.
to me, again, I'm willing to push the envelope with the budget. And again, that's not just, I just talk Benton because I know those numbers.
Right.
But Burlington certainly is probably the school of all.
It has the most.
And then you've got, what, Fort Lewis or?
Glen Cove is probably,
Mason's
it's on the
Point.
cusp of Title I. It's not there yet, but it's on the cusp.
So those are so that's why I'm saying,
It makes
they're
sense.
gonna get the Title
And the grant money is tremendous, but it's temporary.
And it's going
So
away.
I think that is the goal for all of us. So let's look at that, if you're fine with that, through the budget process, knowing the cost can be deferred, but it's a temporary fix to a long-term problem
Yeah.
that we want to work through.
Availability is the other challenge
Yes.
as well. We're, mid-year, you're not going to find any available at this
Right.
point. And a lot of the divisions around the state are snapping up reading specialists right now. So we wanted to first make the middle schools whole. And I think that's that was the priority through the grant itself, because a lot of them, weren't just, really weren't fully staffed for that position. But like Jess said, going forward, that's the kind of thing we really have to go out and do some recruiting to find those. There's a real shortage of reading specialists right now. And so to get 3, 4, 5 in a year might be a big ask. It might be something too that you want to phase in over time just to make sure you get quality people, or people that are licensed.
Is this something that requires an additional licensure?
It is.
Okay.
And it would also allow us the opportunity to look at some folks that we have in-house that might be
Absolutely.
interested in
Let's get
doing
ready
that.
to say that.
Yeah,
and
run a
partnering
program.
To help
Offer-
support them to attend the programs.
Right, offer some tuition assistance or something.
Yeah.
And maybe even folks that are close to retirement, part-time, I don't know.
Mhm. And I mean, we could even look at, repurposing some staff development money or something like that towards that this year or next, and run a program.
And if we run out
in-house.
of money from funding for, from the budget process, then I still want to push that envelope, and you can put that back on us, then we've got to find it, or go to our counterparts and say, look, this is absolutely fundamental to what, what we're trying to do here, so, thank you.
All right. As far as the Virginia Literacy Act, the actual funds for that are there. The phonological, the basically PALS tutoring, extra money for that. The Literacy Act coordinator and Literacy Act instructional materials. Basically, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to do PD for the folks that are implementing this and make sure it's being implemented with fidelity. So that, really, that's half the battle right there. And so this is going to be filling in. Honestly, with the Virginia Literacy Act, a lot of divisions, one of the reasons why they included that at the state level at a higher percentage is that a lot of divisions were starting at ground zero on that. We were probably 2/3 into the implementation. So we're ahead of where a lot of divisions are. So we're finishing our implementation. A lot of folks are just starting their implementation at this point. In terms of chronic absenteeism, I don't want to belabor this, but you can see that as COVID hit, all of a sudden the last couple of years, chronic absenteeism has gone up dramatically. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but and because there's a lot of reasons for that, it requires a lot of different strategies to try to address it. Just to give you an idea of some of the things we're looking at, we're trying to improve our messaging. One of the things that we realize is that we've been telling folks for the last few years, if you got a little cough, keep them home. If you've got, we were really operating more towards the cautious side in terms of keeping folks home. And I think we need to level out a little bit and get back to more of a normal situation. Because I think folks are really leery of, if a kid's got a little cold or something, they're, boom, keep them home until there's no more cough, there's, et cetera. So I think we've got to find a balance there. We also have to do the messaging in terms of letting folks know that although we were out for a couple of years and we're able to do some work at home, now we really need to build that habit of getting back to school and build that habit of sending kids back to school. And some folks have gotten out of that habit, and we need to build that back. And for the folks that struggle with that, we need to do various attendance programs to do interventions, to give support. Dr. McClung can mention maybe the Attendance Works program.
It's actually in line with PBIS efforts in having a multi-tiered system of support for kids who have attendance issues. And this resource that they've provided to us will allow us to put things in place in our schools for all kids, and then some kids who need more targeted assistance, and then individual help. And Dr. Stegall's worked really closely with the school social workers to revamp the way we're handling that whole process. It's really exciting, some of the things that we're going to be able to put into place.
And Dr. Stegall actually has learned about another program that some other divisions are just starting that could be really innovative.
Yeah. So what that one is we had our local judges actually come and ask if we would be interested in running a program where it's kind of like we hold a community support meeting with the students who have attendance problems. And so we have DSS at the table, behavioral health at the table. The judges are on there with us, and school support staff. So the idea is we wrap around services prior to taking it to court, then waiting to get to court to get the services. So we're going to structure a program in order to run those meetings for those students.
And the judges have actually come to us about that. They're
Judges are phenomenal to work with. I mean, they
They are.
support the schools.
so that's fabulous.
Mr. Williams?
No, go ahead.
The numbers that we're looking at, are those percentages or are those?
Those are percentage of students that have been absent more than 18 days in a school year.
And that's a good.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I don't think there's any shortage of, this is why I say this about, and maybe it's not just reading, but math, whatever. I think, I hope this, my thought isn't true, but because, you know, when you look at so William Byrd and Northside in high school are the highest. William Byrd and Northside in middle are the highest. And I can't remember all 6, but I'm gonna go Condiff,
Mountain View.
Penn Forest, Mountain View. I just put the 7 top. I probably should have left one out, but Mountain View, Penn Forest and Clearbrook were really close. But you got Mountain View, Mount Pleasant, Herman Elhorn, Clearbrook, and Burlington. And my point is, I don't think there's any, I love the chart because I think it says what my fear is that the lower socioeconomic places, it's the worst. And so if we lose those kids, we're not going to get them back. And that's why, for me, and the thought process of what we're doing here and getting this money is, and I'm, you know, and I don't care where they're at or what schools, but we target those areas. We've got to target those schools and those areas to change that, the percentages. Because when I look at William Byrd and see 22 when it was at 10, 11, and 15, and I don't know, that 2 must be a 12 or something. But anyway, you know, and then I go look at Northside at 18, 19, and it was at 10, and 12. I mean, these are obviously, there's reasons. That's not that's not an anomaly. It's real data, so it's something we need to address and figure out what's going on.
One of the things we've done when I met with the social worker at William Byrd and at Northside both asked for extra support. So we are adding another social worker that's part of this plan, and their whole goal is to support those 2 schools, those 2 feeder schools, because we did notice they had the highest concern. So they're going to have some casework taken off of them to help them be more efficient. And we're also going to tap into the high-need schools, and they're going to assist them as well. So we're adding a social worker for that reason.
So the SAC, I appreciate that. When we did the SAC breakout groups, one of the issues they said was they could not get counselors.
Yeah.
They're tied up with everything except.
A life counselor.
Yeah, right.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, but that's desperate.
Those numbers are extremely concerning.
You went
They
from
really
single
are.
digits to double digits. I mean,
I'll be
huge.
honest with you, it's probably, you know, issue number 1
It's issue
for us
number
at this point instructionally. Although that's not direct instruction, that has a direct impact on instruction. And so we're fighting a headwind with our attendance that we need removed. Absolutely. We would have expected this to have dropped and gone back down to, you know, revert to the mean. Hasn't reverted to the mean, and that's, intervention's going to be required there. The other thing we're looking at is having more uniform attendance guidance and directions at the school, making sure that we're requiring notes in all circumstances when a student's out. You know, like Dr. Segal mentioned, the new program for student attendance support. So basically, hitting it from multiple points is the key.
Mr.
And
Chairman, if I could just add, because I think this is important, Mr. Williams.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, we are not alone in this battle.
Oh,
This is
no.
across the entire state. This is across the United States. We are not an anomaly.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'd be curious to see what other percentages, you know, have gone up to, but.
I would too. They don't
Yeah.
publish that statewide like they do the scores.
And
But,
you know,
Do you
and I-
think it's
and I
attributable to devaluing the importance of school during COVID, in my opinion?
Not really. I think it's connected to us sending the message, stay at home. If you have the sniffles, don't come to school. And it also is contributing to the factor that we made it easy for them to stay at home and do school because we had everything on Blackboard. So students learned quickly that they can do the work from home, and the parents learned that as well. So even though it's not direct instruction, they're still getting the classwork and not falling behind. So we have to show the value of actually coming into school, sitting in front of a teacher, so we've got to push that
just
point.
because you can be home doing the assignment doesn't mean you're there for the initial instruction on a unit. You know, all the things that really, you know, help build the context of what you're learning. Simply doing assignments, which is what you can do at home, doesn't fit the bill when you get to test time.
But we also need to make sure that our teachers aren't teaching from PowerPoints, from computers. You know, I visit schools and I do see that there is a trend for all the kids to just be at their laptops and on the whiteboard. And so if you can do it for home, why go sit in, you know, you were seeing this across the workplace too, right?
Sure.
So we have to make sure that we continue to innovate, and not just with technology, with, you know, being a dynamic.
Absolutely. We don't want to teach ourselves
Education.
out of a job by not being dynamic. Exactly. Because if you can do that at home, and you don't need the teacher. And, you know, I know that Dr. Nicely believes wholeheartedly, and we do too, that there's something that being there with the teacher, you know, having the more hands-on experiences, you know,
Social
those are the
skills,
things, building
all
your
that.
social skills, et cetera. You know, some of the things like the collaboration and, you know, building your communication skills, et cetera. We can't do all of that as well or as efficiently at home. So, you know, we have to battle that. The student who doesn't want to get out of bed and says, well, I can get it all done, I'm not going to fall behind. They might not fall behind initially, but their learning will fall behind. And so, and that hurts us on the achievement side later on.
Well,
So-
eventually, these are going to be some of the dropouts that we see.
We hope not, because we've got a lot of other safety nets in place. But basically what it does, it puts more strain on our other safety nets. It puts more strain on our tutoring programs, puts more strain on the folks that track all of that, puts more strain, frankly, on the students, because then they're getting pulled out of various classes for intervention. And so yeah, we need folks to be here. And Dr. Stigall mentioned the thing about the sniffles. I think that's absolutely right. There's pretty much a stigma now. You have a persistent cough that won't go away. And you might have a kid home for a week or week and a half when they don't need to be home. But, you know, we have to get over that stigma now and move on.
Totally.
Absolutely. And school needs to continue to be fun for these kids. And I think over COVID, it wasn't so fun anymore, was it?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the research shows that one of the best things you can do to improve chronic absenteeism in your school is work on your school climate and work on your tier 1 instruction to make sure that school is a place they want to be. You build those relationships, you improve the quality of your instruction, and again, you have all those wraparound services and make it a place that kids want to get out of bed for. Absolutely. And so the funding there would total up to about 14.4%, where we've got intervention specialists, the lead social worker, additional ASTEP help, and incentives, meaning, you know, for, you know, celebrate, you know, a little extra money for celebrations for, you know, when students do attend school regularly.
Can you go right back?
Sure.
Unlike what I had mentioned
Okay. There you go.
during the budget, where we wanted to build in the full position in the budget and the general fund, what you'll see on 2024 for your intervention specialist and your lead social worker and your ASAP teacher is this is one-time money, so we're only going to build in half of the year, because by the time we can get someone hired, we get the budget approved and everything, it'll be about a half a year for these positions. And so the first year is a half year, and then it's a full year for the following couple of years. And then,
Can I add for the A-step position? So the social workers thought for the students who were at risk of dropping out, we needed more spaces. And not necessarily the problem with spaces, but we also need transportation for those kids, because that's part of the barrier. So what we've used is we've given each of the 5 high schools 2 additional A-step spots, and we're providing transportation to those students. So that will help them get to the A-step program. So all the social workers felt like that was something we definitely needed to do to curb the dropout rate.
I think that's excellent. Yeah,
We
very.
need to come out one day and see the A-step program.
Oh, yeah, it's
We
wonderful.
really do. I
You
mean,
haven't been out?
I haven't been out and seen it.
Yeah, it's
And,
Of course, I got confused with the situation, but anyway.
well, yeah.
But it was
she's-
really neat the way, what is happening there. It's
Yeah, Miss Turner's offered, and I need to come out and see it.
neat to do it.
We really do. She's got data with, it's a very successful program.
And, you know, this is a double-edged sword. You hate to say we need to grow that program, but I think we do need to grow that program.
We need to have that program.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know, yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Well,
Well, and that kind of ties into the absenteeism issue, right? If you've got kids who feel like they're going to school and not being supported, they can go to a different environment. They're being supported, but it's not working for them, I should say. So to go to a different type of school where they can have everything that they need right there, it's going to make them that much more successful.
Smaller.
A smaller environment or whatever their needs may be.
And, you know, the last part of that, category 4, we're not asking for a whole lot in terms of administrative costs. In fact, you know, we're not, in terms of the overhead on our end, we're just absorbing all of that. The only thing we're asking for is elementary summer school and middle school summer school transportation on top of what we've already mentioned. And I'm going to hand that back to you.
All right. Real quick, before we move here, so with the summer school transportation, if you recall, we did build $53,825 into the transportation budget this year to cover the summer school. And so this is going to supplement the funding that's already built into the budget. And then we can kind of true up the original budget as we move along.
So you'll have a little bit more money.
We will, yes. What we plan on doing is using the general fund money first, and then we'll dip into this so that the funds can carry over from one year to the next. As long as we meet our MOE, RLE, RLM, we will be able to carry these funds over from year
So
to year.
it's a good use of category 4.
Yes, we try. And then the only other thing that kind of fell out with this all-in plan is our after-school. When Mr. Riley and Ms. Hogan and the other administrators were looking at how much to cost out for the after-school tutoring, it was determined that currently we're paying $25. That probably would not be enough to attract teachers for after-school hours.
Is this competitive at 30?
You might have heard on the radio and news about some other divisions that are paying closer to 50.
Well, my question is, if you work, I would think that the teacher's salaries are probably close to that normal hours, right? I mean, I'm not a math expert, but if you're making, the average teacher, what would you say is making?
I got to defer to you on that one.
probably a
I'm
couple
going
hundred
to defer
a
to
day.
Mr. Bradshaw.
What would be the, yeah, I mean, what would be a kind of a average?
Couple hundred a day would be
Oh, absolutely, 55.
Would be 1,000
I
a
can
week.
give you the hourly rate. If you give me 3 minutes, I'll look it up.
Yeah, based off of.
So I'll tell you the rationale here. We would love to pay more. We really would. Our biggest concern, though, was if we move to a much bigger number, then what we end up doing is we end up gutting some of the other programs
Well, that's what I was
and
gonna get
getting,
at.
pulling folks from one program to do another program.
We spent $500,000 on that program, and I know, did we use ARPA funds for that? Was that ARPA or was that?
It's, we're talking about the brain fuse.
Total time?
ARPA funds.
And I'm looking at it, well, no wonder we can't attract teachers if we're paying them less to work essentially overtime than we are when they're working during the day. Well, if I'm a teacher, why in the world would I go and work extra hours for $30? I mean, I'm just kind of looking at it like, I mean, nothing against you guys, I'm not
Oh,
trying to be
no.
negative. I'm just like, if I were a teacher and I'm making $40 an hour during the day, or 35, why would I want to stay after and do 30?
Yeah, so, what we were trying to balance was the long-term and short-term impact. The short-term impact being the concern that we end up pulling folks from other after-school things that they're doing because they go after the money here, meaning we'd have to potentially raise other dollar amounts. And then the other piece being the sustainability. When it drops off, are we going to continue to be able to get people at back to a normal rate? If we wanted to go up to a higher rate and sustain that, that's probably something we want to do through the budget process because, that has pretty significant impacts on, I know, my budget, on the Title I
Just about
budget.
every
It's
department.
Yeah, pretty much every department.
I'm just looking at it, if we're looking at trying to increase the reading and the things that we're talking about, one-on-one or at least small group tutoring to me is imperative. But if we don't have the employees to do it because we're not paying them enough, then maybe we need to look at that.
Did y'all ask them boys why, if we were having a shortage there? And if it's $25 to the 30 would be, or did you just say, well, it'd be better?
Well, not for this particular, one of the things we did with this is kind of ask around to the local areas and see what other divisions around us were paying. And that's similar to what other divisions around us were paying. There's some divisions in, like inner city areas and things like that that are paying, and in Northern Virginia, that are paying far above that, but there's a reason for
Like
that as well.
Botetourt, Montgomery, Salem.
We're pretty much in line.
We
with
are, they're
those
30 to
folks.
35.
What's a teacher's
Our
median?
beginning teacher is $30.70 an hour. Our average is gonna be right near $38.19 an hour.
I mean, that's where I'm at with it. It's no wonder they don't want to work outside.
But we work 25, so at least getting to 30 puts us toward the beginning, but yeah, it's a step, but you're exactly right.
I mean, these people have to have licenses and, you know, this is what the backbone of our education system is and.
Well, and to that point, then it becomes our problem, right?
Right.
So if we need to look at that, at least you could bring us the numbers to look at that, and then we need to go to our counterparts, whatever we have to do. If we believe in this strongly enough, that's what we need to do.
Are we
You
seeing
know-
a shortage? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we can't devalue what our teachers and educators bring to this process. And we know, like Cheryl said, I get we're not different than others and we're far ahead of most. But it's kind of like your children, well, little Johnny went and did this, and so I thought I could. Well, I don't care about, little Johnny's not but you're not. So I feel like that about Roanoke County. I want us to be able to provide the best and be able to, if you need it, we need to figure a way to get it
Based off
for
the
you.
needs of this, figure out what would attract the teachers to fill the spots that you need and bring us a number.
I think that we will be able to fill the spots we need at 30, given that, like I was mentioning before, most of what we're talking about in this, for this money would be folks doing after school, but the after school isn't a good fit for the all-in tutoring model, because you're after school pretty much, at least 3 days a week, maybe 5 days a week. So that's a tall ask. I don't think you do that to a kid unless they're already in an after-school program. In which case, a lot of times you work with the after-school program people to deliver it. The people that we do get, because it's a relatively small number, we could likely, I think the feeling is among the instructional staff that we could staff it at that. But would we have a large number of people clamoring for it and, we'd have to pick of everybody? Not necessarily. I think long-term, could we benefit from higher pay for a lot of different hourly tasks? We can, but we would need to look at how does that look with the budget? And do we get the number of hours that we need if we, if we don't have budgets that expand in a commensurate fashion?
Well, and I just look at this, I mean, this is more important than some of the projects we talked about earlier. We worry about those things, but the education piece is number one, because we can have pretty buildings, but if we don't have the quality teachers and the quality instruction, then we're wasting our time.
But you're definitely talking about two different buckets of.
You are, but what I'm saying is we're very passionate about one thing.
I understand.
I completely understand what you're saying, where the money comes from, but what I'm saying is, we're very passionate about certain things, but sometimes I feel like things like this kind of get put through the wash, and we don't emphasize so much on it, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. So this other pamphlet that you hand us here, for Youngkin's All in Virginia initiative that he's put forth, I believe that you can group kids, right? We'll be grouping kids, and that you can also, it has to be face-to-face, but did I read somewhere that it no longer has to be it doesn't have to be face-to-face in the sense that it's face-to-face, it could be Zoom face-to-face?
Correct, and the Ignite reading,
Not
for
that I
example-
am a proponent of that, I just know we're talking
Sure.
about resources and humans and everything else.
Ignite reading would still need a person to facilitate, but you could have one facilitator for a classroom of kids.
Okay.
And each student would be individual with the tutor there. Ignite Reading does a one-on-one tutoring model, but it's through their, through a virtual tutor. Whereas the Zern program doesn't have a live person on the other end, and it's facilitated with help from the tutor. And so the Zern program, even though it's individual in terms of working the modules that are online, you can still do a group of kids 10 to 1, let's say, relatively easily. And in terms of building that into the school schedule, that's what we're going to do. Keep in mind, when we talk about the all-in tutoring plan, we're talking about 99, 97%, something along those lines, being done during the school day by teachers that are currently, getting paid for that.
Do you have an hourly figure, or not a figure, but an hourly? I know each school is going to be a little different because you're going to have maybe more at Condiff than you would at Horn or whatever. But is there a estimate on the hours that your goals for this, for the year?
Yeah, it's in here, and the additional folks, it's less of the, a lot of the funding isn't necessarily as much for after school as it is bringing in additional tutors from the outside. Additional tutors from the outside, that is, they're few and far between. They're hard to get, in terms of qualifications.
Okay, so what are the qualifications that they're saying for the all-in program? Because people can be trained to do this tutoring program and work under the guise of somebody else too. So if you don't have a full-fledged reading specialist, which I'm not saying is ideal or not ideal, but that's what the plan is allowed, you're going to have some leeway there, right?
Exactly, and we're working with people that are, we're looking for people that are trainable.
Trainable.
Essentially. And trainable, professional, have, an academic background that would support success in this, doesn't have to be related to education. We've been advertising for those tutoring positions already. So if you go to our website, you'll see some of that. Mr. Bradshaw's helped us with that, with the tutoring advertising. And so we are trying to get folks on that end. At the same time, though, again, we also have tutors that have been with us for years. And so we were worried if we've got, let's say, tutors that are paid by PALS or tutors that are paid by Title I, that if we have different rates of pay for all of those, then we would be in a situation where we would eat our own. And, we'd lose our PALS tutors.
You jump ship.
We'd have our own people jump ship for those
Yep.
positions.
I think you have to be very careful about that.
And that's a primary concern.
Yep.
Long-term for us. I'd say that is the number one concern. So if we were to, extend it beyond 30, we would really need to extend it for a lot of other positions that are both grant and local funded, in order to avoid basically cannibalizing.
Oh, well, I hope that you can fill the positions. We'll see
And
what
if we, and so I would say if we have trouble, we can come back to you and increase that. And also, if you wanted to run some numbers as well.
I think that makes sense. Because we can get them for that, I'm not sure that, then in our Title I or in our other programs, you hate to eat those funds too, but by the same token, if we have to look at that, I think that's something we have to look at. This is important, to get this remediation.
Yeah.
Mr.
I would like to pay more. It's just, it's simply the question is, could we sustain it? And that would, like I said, that's more of a you question than it is a.
Well, then that becomes, and that's true.
Do you throw that money, though, at after-school teachers, or do you throw that money at chronic absenteeism that is probably causing some of that need for after-school
I think
assistance?
It's all-in approach. I think you got to
Is it the chicken or is it the egg?
Well, that's what we need.
That's why
the
you
point.
gotta
I mean,
do
you're right,
everything.
but that's Ken's job to let us know what.
And just understand, all of these things, after these grants run out, they all are small individually, maybe a few $100,000, but they all add up to real numbers that have to be covered. by local funds and when these grants run out.
I get it.
9 positions in this program.
Sorry, would you repeat that?
Sorry, we have 9 positions that will be funded through this program that in fiscal year '27, we're going to have to figure out how to build those back into our budget.
But we also
get the
have
kids back
folks
in the
that
classroom.
retire, folks that leave, that then they can come into those positions if they want to, right?
If you wanted to do it by attrition, but if you wanted to keep the same number of positions.
Well, I get it, but I'm hoping that we get past this, to where we can go back to just normal levels, normal hours, normal whatever. But, until we get there, obviously, I think the approach and the all-in program is a great idea. But I do agree with Brent. I just think, if we can look at that pay a little bit, and if we have to, that you're right, that's a you problem, that's a us problem. Then we have to, if we really believe that, then we've got to go to your buddies across town and we've got to say, look, we gotta have it. This is important. This is.
Well, and then you're telling us whether or not that is sufficient, and if we see that deficit, we need to take action with it promptly, not waiting. And like you said, it might be 200 here, 200 there to bring everybody to that same playing field.
And I think we'll know in the next few months, we're gonna have a much better idea as to whether the pay is adequate. Probably by budget time, we'll have a good idea whether it is or not. And then if it's not, we can come back to you.
Do we keep track of how many of these students that need tutoring are also the same students that are chronically absent?
There is almost a one-to-one relationship between the two. Now, that we have, roughly, 13 or so percent division-wide, 15% somewhere in there, division-wide chronically absent. But the number of students identified for this program is more like 33%, which is down from the original numbers. Remember, the original numbers I came back to you was like 66.
66.
Yeah.
It was
What we did is I know.
I was like, oh!
Yeah, I heard that over the.
Over the speaker?
Over the speaker. But.
You should have seen my face, Mr. Williams.
But what we did is we took multiple data points and said, okay, for reading, we have 3 quality data points, and you had to be low on 2 of the 3 to qualify. So if you were high on 2 and just had that one outlier, then we're like, that's an outlier. And now schools do have the flexibility to add or subtract a student based on what they see.
Okay, so if you see growth,
If they see growth and they know a
Development,
kid's
you
there, boom, let's replace that
or
student.
vice versa.
Or vice versa. Kids starting to slide, boom, move them in. So we do have flexibility, but we have gone ahead and identified roughly a third.
It's still significant, and I'm happy for this program. I know it's a burden on a lot of divisions to put this in place, but obviously it was needed. And thank you for the superintendent of our schools for
I'm
putting
glad
this in
we're
place.
ahead of the curve.
Well, we were with our
Absolutely.
literacy plan, yeah, absolutely.
So just for clarification purposes, are you okay with us submitting the plan and approving the plan as it stands, and letting us come back to you with changes in the rates in a couple of months if we see that's necessary? Or are you wanting us to go back and rework this before next week when we need it approved for the plan?
I'll just make a comment. I think it's important, as Ben said, not to eat our own. And that was my concern with this plan. We'll have people jumping ship. So if that's your advice, I say we stick with staff's advice, see what happens, and go from there.
These sort of changes are better made between school years, where we can plan for those contingencies and write things into grants that account for that. So that would be my recommendation.
But we could also cost out what the hourly rate would cost if we needed a budget increase for all the other programs that would be impacted. We did that last year, but maybe we can look at that again.
Yeah, I like
Absolutely.
that idea too.
And we need to work with Dr. Nicely. so.
I'm okay with this to get it approved. I just think, moving forward, we need to be ready to
I
adapt.
think you said we'd know better.
Yeah, in a few months, if we're finding
Right.
areas that have holes and we can't fill those holes, the
No.
question will be, can we not fill them because there's not people out there or because the price point's wrong? And so that'll be the question.
All right.
Then we'll leave this as is and then follow up during the budget season. All right, so we're going to move on to some grant items I need to bring to your attention. The first item is we did get 3 new grants this year that are either federally funded or state funded and do need to roll through the school board as opposed to our individual schools. Green Valley and Mount Pleasant got the Virginia Commission of Arts touring grants for some musicals that Green Valley's had theirs and Mount Pleasant's coming up. And then the Virginia Department of Education has allocated $5,000 to the Green Valley Solar Car project coming up. And so for these two, we can use grant kind of special project money to fund it, that I'll talk about in the next slide. But we just do, anytime we get a grant that was not budgeted, we do bring it to you for approval. So as,
Touring you can do for $100.
I was just gonna say.
it's a matching grant.
From Glenville?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small matching grant. So then the next page, this graph is pretty complicated. When I use the term special project balances, this is really a budget hold, if you will. We have a budget hold in all of the funds that are shown in here, the operating fund, general fund, the fleet fund, the grant fund, nutrition fund, and minor capital fund. We have revenue budgeted for this amount and expenditures budgeted for this amount. These are for unknown kind of extra monies coming in, such as grants like I showed in the prior slide. Throughout the year, as our federal funds that we do budget increase or decrease, we run that change through this balance. In the current year, we received $275,354 more in IDEA funding, the special education grants from the federal government, than we had budgeted for. And in addition, we received $139,104 more for Title I funding than what we had budgeted for. So that pretty much wiped out our special project balance, which is why you see the negative $77,533. So we do need to replenish that. And being this early in the year, it is my recommendation that we go ahead and just add a revenue and an expense for $250,000 into the grant fund to cover any additional changes and grants that may come down the pike or any other new grants that may come along as well. Any questions on that?
Nope, I'm glossing over.
All right, so then I want to shift into kind of realignment of our expenditures. This comes about, this next slide, I ran our numbers as of October 31st. The top half of this slide shows all of the categories that make up the ordinance that the county approved for our funding. And you can see how it's laid out. And then the next section is where we have shifted budget to where we need it as opposed to where we originally budgeted. And I'll just give you a quick little example. This is going to always happen because they do not adopt our budget based on department, they adopt it based on category. In my department alone, I have a category for insurance, I have a category for fiscal services, I have categories for instruction, I have categories for other items as well, just in my department alone. I literally cannot take extra budget that's sitting in the insurance category and just move it to instruction or move it to fiscal or move it to one of these other categories without taking it to the Board of Supervisors for approval in my department. And I've already done that because we had an excess of our property budget of just a small amount that I repurposed for another reason within my small little budget. So that's just to give you a little idea of what's behind the scenes with this change. It's just where we encourage the departments to put the budget where they need it, where they're using it. And so that just created a misalignment with where the budget is sitting now. At the very bottom in the yellow, you can see, for example, in instruction, our ordinance was lower and we need more money in there. In attendance, it was higher in the ordinance and we need less money in there. And so we just need to request the Board of Supervisors to shift the funds to where we are spending it. So our total,
You need to get their approval to send $6,345, or you changed and you've got to get their approval for $1,500, and you got to get their approval for $270. Holy crap.
so that's kind
I can't
of
believe y'all let this happen.
the drivers of the current ordinance. And the last screen, instead of taking those individual dollars, on the left-hand side of this shows our additional funding for Chapter 1, our additional funding for the All-In Plan, the reduction in the mentor teacher grant. It comes up to the total amount of the change in our ordinance. The right-hand side takes all of those realignments, all of the new funding, and that adjustment, if the Board of Supervisors approves the ordinance in the right-hand side, will get us back into alignment with how we're spending our funds. So that's the piece that we will be taking to the Board of Supervisors to approve.
Well, let me just say, we apologize for you having to do this, for us getting funding for those schools. We apologize. But
It's a lot of work.
it is. It's,
I was told it wasn't going to be any work by their chairwoman. I'm surprised to hear that.
It's a lot of work.
yeah, so,
And it's easier for the county to report on function because their entire department is a function. None of our departments are one function.
you're broken down so
We're
much.
all operate out of multiple functions.
Right.
That's the
Rub.
difference here.
Well, I hope they're happy.
So this will be a common new topic that I'll have to bring up.
I'm glad we talked about
Ad nauseam.
$270.
Are you broken by cost centers or what? How do you, each individual department?
So each department has a department budget, and within the department budget, they use the function that aligns with what they're actually spending. So that we
Functions
can report, and by function, that's the
Yeah.
categories.
Do you have a cost center under that or just a function?
We do have a license in that.
You got a cost center under that? Okay. That's
the
a
program.
lot of work.
It is. Because we have to report to the Virginia Department of Education by function and program.
Yeah.
And so those function and programs are what every department has to split their budgets up into.
And that's where you start.
Well, if I make it over there, I'll try and help you on that.
Down the tree.
I'm not sure I'll make it because they'll try and kill
Has
me.
it been explained to them, the extra work that it's created?
I mean, I explained this when I presented it, when we adopted the budget.
I also explained it when we were having conversations about our feelings towards it.
I've tried to explain it through my negative comments. Is there any sarcastic comments? I don't know what else you can do.
Ask for more funding for more people in budget. More staff.
Which is actually what both boards rails against, is having more.
But then each department still has to have their own
Yeah.
people before it gets.
I don't make the departments
Yeah. see,
true this
that's-
up. I keep that in our department to true this up.
See, that's the other thing.
Not everybody on that board will be on that board
I
forever.
hope not.
That's it, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready for your next one?
I'm done.
You done? Everything's good?
That's it. I'm
Budget
done.
calendar.
That was. Oh, wait, no. I do
Annual
have another
budget.
one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It was a long presentation. I was starting to question myself when you gave me that answer, but I'm like, well, there's 3.09 I don't have checked off
Oh, I
here.
forgot about that
Three
one,
parts
sorry.
here.
So now we need to move into the next year. I've already talked about fiscal year '23, fiscal year '24. Now we're moving into fiscal year '25. And yes, it is time to start our budget planning.
How many slides?
Hmm?
How many slides?
It's only one slide,
Okay, I saw a
I think you
30
need to
right
talk
there.
fast.
but,
I saw a 30 on the bottom. I was like, are you counting down?
but there's a lot of pieces to this. So when we create our calendar, and I don't know that I've ever gone through and explained all of this, we have to look at multiple other people's budget. First, I look at the state budget, and as you can see up here, I've got, and I'm sorry it's so teeny, but you'll understand why in a minute because it's going to get busy. The state budget, we've got some very critical pieces. In December, the governor will present his budget bill. This will occur tentatively on the 20th. So we'll look at we'll get a calc tool about a week after that. We'll run numbers to see kind of where our beginning spot is to look at our budget for next year.
Will this be the first year of the biennium?
Yes, it will be. So it'll be a long session.
Yep.
And also, just for your information, we usually have less money in the first year than we have in the second year. And VRS typically hits, I'm not sure that that's going to be an issue this year, but typically we have to fund more in VRS, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. The House crossover is in February, and so we're going to take a second look at the revenue after that occurs. So that'll be February 13th. And then the General Assembly is set to adjourn March 9th, and that's when we get our final numbers. Unless, of course, they go into special sessions and make adjustments later on, which they've done in many of the most recent years. So that's the state side. Then we have to look at the county timeline. And in January, they take a look at their financial policies and if any changes are needed. They start to look at their CIPs. They start to work on budget issues and adopt their financial policies. Beginning in February, then they're going to start looking at their revenues and their fees. So the end of January, beginning of February, we may get our first look at what the revenue sharing agreement is going to look like, because really we have to wait until they can budget out what the revenue they think they're going to get, and then they run that through the revenue sharing agreement. Then also in February, they're going to have a full-on work session in their CIP, and they'd like to have our draft of our CIP, so that's going to affect when we look at things. In March, they'll have the public hearing on the tax rates. The county administrator will have a review of his budget. And then in April is when our budget is due to them on April 1st, and so I'll email that over to them so that they have an official copy. And then we'll present, the chairman and I and Dr. Nicely and whoever else wants to come along, we'll go and present to the Board of Supervisors our budget. So what that does is kind of drives where I've planned out our work sessions. So that it's going to look a little bit different because I'm thinking we can start our first work session February 1st. We'll kind of ease into it. We'll go over with the first work session, an introduction to budgeting, the governor's budget. We'll look at CIP so we can get a draft to the county. We'll review our replacement plans and we'll look at department budgets. So then on the February 15th, we have to have a public hearing. We can have that at the regular work meeting. And when I budgeted out our sessions, I kept with the current schedule of with the first Monday being first Thursday being a work session and the third Thursday being a regular meeting. So if that changes and you want to change this schedule, then that will be subject to change. Then on March 7th, we would have the second work session. This would cover our crossover budgets, our local revenue, because hopefully by then we would have some better numbers from the county. Compensation and benefits. Usually we do this in February, but I think pushing this back to March may give us a little bit more of a breather and a little bit, and Mr. Bradshaw is nodding his head over there. I think this is gonna give us some better, firmer numbers, and help coordinate that estimate. We can't really look at the nutrition fund until we see what compensation and benefits is gonna be, because that's gonna be a good part of their money, so we'll look at that work session along with the internal service funds, because those directly relate to your health insurance, and that'll kind of feed together. Then on March 19th, that is an added work session that I have dropped in there because of when the General Assembly is adjourning on March 9th. We will probably get a final calc tool within a week of that. And there's not really a good time for a meeting before we adopt. And so I wanted to throw in another meeting so that we could put forth the draft. So any last minute changes that you desired could be made before we would adopt the budget on March 21st. And then we'll present it to the Board of Supervisors on April 9th. So that's kind of, it's a little bit different of a schedule, to try and push it back a little bit and kind of get a little breathing room. So, still a lot of information. Still gonna be a
No,
lot
it's
of
good
work
to have an outline and a time frame.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
What
that.
we're looking at.
And
Thank
now,
you. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate all your hard work. Ben, everybody that presented, Todd,
Yep.
Stephanie. Anybody have anything else?
I just want to say thank y'all for moving the meeting to, I want to let everybody know so that there's no question. We moved it to Wednesday because of me, and I appreciate it.
It's funny you say that because I've gotten a few questions like, why do you keep moving the meetings?
No, I know it.
It's all Tim.
There's
Some conspiracy
conspiracy.
Getting his
out
nails
there. There's a
done.
conspiracy out there.
Where are you going?
All right, well, we'll finish up. Well, Ken, we miss you. We'll see you next
I'm
week.
going to see the Eagles and Doobie Brothers.
Ooh.
Meeting adjourned.
So,